Okay. Time for part 2. Yeah, no green screen this time. I'm pretty sure the joke is dead. If you have not seen part 1 of this series, I highly recommend you click that little widget up top there, as that part breaks down a lot of the general changes that I'll be making with this rewrite, as well as going over the story's first act. Today in part 2, we will be covering all of the Disney worlds, as well as all the plot stuff that happens in between. Actually, speaking of plot things, I actually wanted to make a quick addendum to part 1 and address something that I forgot to mention. As you may have noticed, I've been using Kingdom Hearts 3's data greeting feature to portray a lot of scenes that weren't featured in the original game. It is an incredible tool, and I'm really lucky to use it. However, it does lack a lot of assets to portray certain scenes exactly how I would like them. So if some scenes in this rewrite use this black and white filter, that probably means you guys are going to have to use your imagination in how I'm portraying this scene. Granted, I could wait till the games come to PC in a couple weeks and see what the modding community does, but I got deadlines to keep, so this is the best we can do. But I think that's everything. Let's not waste any further time and jump right back into it. Welcome to part 2 of rewriting Kingdom Hearts 3.
So, when I started scripting this part, I naively thought that I wouldn't have a lot of changes to make to the Disney worlds, as a lot of my major changes that I want to make to the story are happening in between the Disney worlds and the whole back half of the game. No, we got some sizable stuff to change here too. Granted, I will be honest, they are still very minor aspects of the story, but as the old Maxwell Lord saying goes,
life is good, but it can be better.
First, I want to address some overall changes to the Disney worlds. In a lot of the Kingdom Hearts 3 rewrite ideas I've seen floating around online, a common thing I see pop up is that the Disney worlds should be completed in a specific order. Not here. You can still go to whichever readily available world you want at your own leisure, though each world's battle level will still give you an idea of which world you should probably go to first. I feel like getting rid of this really hinders the player's choice in how they would want to do things, so we're keeping it the way it is. Secondly, I actually want to address the world map itself. I don't like it. It feels way too complicated to use, especially with the gateways clogging up the space that make selecting where you want to go such a hassle. Instead, my idealized version of the map works similarly to the Kingdom Hearts 1 world map. You can still make the world icons 3D models, but now the gateways act more as transports between galaxies instead of around the map you're already in, as they activate after clearing all the available Disney worlds on the map. Yes, that does mean you will now have to go straight from one world to the next manually, but Kingdom Hearts 3 did the impossible and made gummy ship traversal actually fun to do, so in my opinion I don't really see this as too much of a problem. And the last thing, as mentioned in the previous video, every time a world is completed, Sora now has a moment where he seals the world's keyhole. This will be done in a similar fashion to both Kingdom Hearts 1 and Dream Drop Distance. Keyhole appears in the sky, Sora locks it away with that ephemeral music playing. And that's about it. Any other changes, I'll explain along the way. So, let's keep going. Toybox remains virtually unchanged, though Sora is now already familiar with young Xehanort from being reintroduced to him in Twilight Town. Also, since this is the world where this is introduced, let's get this out of the way quickly. I'm cutting Verum Rex. Okay, maybe cutting is a bit too harsh, but it's definitely getting a massive reduction. I know Yozora will be important for the future and trust me, we'll definitely be talking about him later, but everything related to him, especially that elaborate Versus 13-esque trailer at the start, just kinda feels out of place with the rest of the world. It can still be around with, say, posters and Rex talking about his favorite game, but referencing Yozora directly should be kept extremely minimal. Finally, we're changing the final boss of this world from a generic Heartless boss to a character that is actually prominent in the Toy Story series. Take a wild guess who that would be.
So, we meet again, Buzz Lightyear, for the last time.
It's Zurg!
Oh, hell yes, Emperor Zurg. Okay, that's all of my changes for Toybox. Let's move on.
Now, off you go. To infinity and beyond!
Our first interval starts at Radiant Garden. Mickey, Riku, and Kairi would be making their pit stop here to retrace their steps on Terra's whereabouts. Kairi would be feeling a lot of emotions coming back to her true homeworld for the first time in forever. No! Stop it! Stop it! We will get to you eventually. Riku, on the other hand, is a bit distraught being here again. The last time he was here, he was an arrogant douche nozzle, and racked with his current self-doubts, he's a bit uncomfortable to say the least. Kairi, however, does remind him of the good he's done to put him at ease, calming his nerves for at least a little bit. They would then go talk with Mickey, who's been surveying the area, as this was the spot where Xehanort, then possessing Terra, was first found according to what Ansem the Wise told him about apprentice Xehanort way back when. Yeah, we're gonna streamline this bit here, as Mickey should really be quick to put 2 and 2 together based on what he already knows. Because in the original game, while the exposition of them coming to the conclusion about Terra is easier for new players to understand, those already familiar with this plot point see it as a long-winded way of coming to a very simple answer. Moving on, a figure in a black coat enters the square, revealed to be none other than Lee. And when Kairi sees this man, her reaction goes from immediate shock to rage. Remember, in this version, the last time she was around Axel was back in Kingdom Hearts 2, and I would assume she's still sore about the whole kidnapping me to save your friend thing. And because she's still trying to prove herself as a competent Keyblade wielder, what's the first thing she does? She summons her weapon, dashes toward Lee, who's trying to reason with her at this point, and wallops him across the square. Riku and Mickey come to the assistance, explaining that Lee is on their side now. Kairi's at first confused and taken aback, but they manage to explain how Lee has helped them recently and that she can trust him. She's a little apprehensive at first, but Lee immediately starts apologizing for how he treated her, and how he's trying to make things right now. Along with some added positive comments on her skill with a Keyblade, Kairi is soon quick to forgive him. He also mentions in passing that he's starting to go by Axel again, claiming that it's starting to grow on him. Riku asks what Axel's doing here since he should be training with Merlin, to which he just responds,
"The wizard gave me the day off. Figured I'd come give you guys a hand."
They ask what Axel may know, to which he divulges about his time as an apprentice for Ansem the Wise. It was brief, but he and Isa became acquainted with many of Ansem's other apprentices, including Xehanort. According to Axel, Xehanort was always up to something, having several experiments going at once, but always having the same thesis: transplanting hearts. However, at the time, he never had a stable way of conducting this experiment because there was no form for him to transplant these hearts to. And that's when it quickly clicks for Riku: the replica program. We get a brief recap of what replicas are, as I'm sure even hardcore fans were caught off guard that this plot point got reintroduced. I was, at least. And the group decide to go visit Ienzo and the others for answers. Meanwhile, we cut to the Dark Margin, and we get that scene of Aqua and Ansem the Wise talking about the outside world. Yeah, we're gonna move this scene earlier just to keep illustrating that Aqua is trapped and needs saving, considering we have the Birth by Sleep trio on our minds after the previous scene. However, we aren't showing the portion with Ansem Seeker of Darkness just yet. We're gonna save this section of the scene for later for, reasons. Let's move on. Okay, so Kingdom of... yeah, no, sorry guys, I can't call it that. So the Tangled World has a bit of a meaty, albeit very nitpicky change, so bear with me for a quick sec. Marluxia is still present in this world, but he'll be taking more of an observant role instead of getting directly involved in the plot. Seriously, this scene on the beach where we're to assume he tied Eugene to the boat like in the film seems really beneath him. So while Marluxia will still be around to observe the events of this world and keep tabs on Sora, Donald, and Goofy, will instead be shifting his active participation in this world's story to another character. Or should I say, two characters.
What, huh now?
Told you Maleficent and Pete would be incorporated later. Maleficent and Pete would come across Mother Gothel when she arrives back at the tower and finds that Rapunzel is gone. Here we would learn that Maleficent and Gothel actually have some history. Thank you, GB Podcasts, for this idea. The story goes as such. Maleficent came to Gothel some time ago to join her Legion of Doom in Kingdom Hearts 1, but turned it down due to her own selfish ambitions. Now, Maleficent has shown up asking if Gothel knows anything about the Black Box. Gothel, the manipulative witch that she is, lies to Maleficent that she knows about it and will disclose its whereabouts if the two of them can bring Rapunzel back. So now, this scene at the shore where Eugene does his thing is slightly altered, where it was Pete who tied him to the boat, and he and Maleficent plant the seeds of doubt in Rapunzel before Gothel swoops in to save her. Tell me in this shot you can't see her knocking Pete out while Maleficent bounces? I don't know, the scenario fits the characters more naturally than, say, Marluxia saying some bland anime dialogue, then sicking random nobodies that get gotted while Gothel's line about them coming two sticks out for being accurate to the film's dialogue, but mismatched here, and I'm rambling again, aren't I? Point is, I think this works a lot better, and it gives us another opportunity for Maleficent and Pete to run into Sora, Donald, and Goofy, where the trio can get a clearer idea of what the two of them are up to. Also, speaking of working better, since this world is the first to bring up this plot point, I might as well mention it here so that we can get it out of the way. We are cutting the new 7 lights. This plot point makes absolutely no sense in any sort of context. Why would the Princesses of Heart need to pass on their power? If they still have hearts of pure light, would that power not stay dormant as long as they still have that light? And furthermore, in a later cutscene, it's revealed that Kairi still apparently has her power, which I'm only assuming is because she's one of the main characters. So why did the Disney princesses need to move on? Just so we can move further through the modern Disney catalog? Because if so...
That's just lazy writing.
So, to circumvent this, Marluxia is instead doing reconnaissance in this world for more people with strong lights in their hearts should the Princesses of Heart be guarded. We're constantly told that Xehanort is a masterful tactician planning for every possible outcome, so why not see him planning his 4D chess game here that anyone with a strong heart could be a target? To them, nobody is safe. Anyway, I've talked long on this world and we gotta move on. Everything else in the world stays relatively the same. Marluxia converts Gothel's remains into a heartless fight, our heroes save the day, and Maleficent and Pete lament how they've once again hit a dead end. However, Maleficent starts to get privy to the fact that the organization may know something, making this line stand out a bit more.
Who said anything about following them?
No.
We cut back to Radiant Garden where we get that cutscene of Riku and Mickey talking with Ienzo about the replica program. We get a lot of the same beats with Ienzo talking about Evan, formerly Vexen, and his research on the replicas and their capabilities. However, it's not until later into the scene that Dylan and Alias, with voice actors this time, arrive and inform them that Evan is missing. Ienzo checks the computer to see that Evan's research is gone, and Riku and Mickey figure that the organization must be behind his disappearance, and are in need of the replicas like they thought. Riku assures Ienzo that they'll find Evan and bring him back safely. Outside, we cut to Kairi and Axel sitting around and eating sea salt ice cream. After a while, Axel notices that Kairi is upset about something. At first he thinks it's him apologizing again, but Kairi says it's not that, eventually deciding to vent that she feels inadequate as a Keyblade wielder. She expresses her desire to feel included after having to watch Sora and Riku go off on adventures all the time and be left behind. It's left her feeling helpless, like she can't do anything to be of use. Axel sits with that thought for a moment before expressing that he understands the feeling in a way. He remembers his time in the old organization and how mismanaged the whole thing was, treating him and Roxas like replaceable cogs in the machine. He admits that after a while he put his fist in his mouth and followed orders, but not Roxas. He kept questioning the organization, not letting them push him around anymore, and eventually he found that inner strength to defy them. Kairi, hearing Axel talk so highly of Roxas, mentions that he must have been a great friend to Axel, to which Axel just snickers and says,
That, or Merlin's wisdom is starting to rub off on me.
The two laugh before Axel decides to leave Kairi with some advice.
Always persevere, because the only person you'll ever have to prove something to is yourself. Got it memorized?
Kairi, a little more hopeful, thanks him for the advice, while also asking him why he says his catchphrase all the time. Axel pauses, as no one has asked him that in a long time. Eventually he answers that he wanted to be remembered.
In people's memories, I can live forever. I'd feel pretty lonely if people forgot about me.
Before Kairi can respond, Riku and Mickey appear and say that they need to head out. She says farewell to Axel, who in return says that he hopes to see her around for some training. Kairi responds,
If I do, don't hold back, Axel. Promise?
In that moment, a flash of light hits Axel's eyes, and for a quick second, Kairi's silhouette is replaced with another girl similar looking to her. A wave of emotions hits Axel before he snaps out of it.
Oh.
And instead, he just simply responds to Kairi that he will. Kairi then rejoins Riku and Mickey, and the three of them continue on their mission. Okay, so Monstropolis is a little difficult for me to alter, as I know people want a boss fight with Arendelle, but it wouldn't really serve the story any purpose outside of obvious fan service. That said, the lack of Disney character boss fights is a little underwhelming, and considering I just added Zurg not too long ago, there's really no excuse. The best way I see handling it is that Arendelle would fight alongside this Phantom Blot looking unversed, that way it doesn't look like you and your party members are exclusively curb stomping this man, while also retaining just a cool boss design. Speaking of the unversed though, the major change we're going to make with this world is with Vanitas. I'm very mixed on how he was included in this world. On one hand, the unversed being the main enemy type in a world based around the idea of negative emotions, in this case fear, is absolutely genius. On the other hand, Vanitas himself just kind of feels tacked on in the end, really there for just an exposition dump on where Ventus is. I think a more interesting way for all of that exposition to be spaced out, as well as just give Vanitas more screen time in this world, is if he was treated more like a ghost haunting Sora. All throughout this world's story, Sora is the only one who could see him for a while, and Vanitas is constantly getting under Sora's skin about how he's not special, how his power never belonged to him, and specifically,
"You will not forestall me from finding him."
One particular scene I think about a lot is maybe like right before the final boss. Sora would be separated from the group via Arendelle figuring out that, oh, the spiky-haired one is your ace, but the winds of change are always blowing. Seriously, why is that always the quote that comes up with Arendelle? I don't understand that. Sora would be on the other side trying to break through, and Vanitas would just be taunting him about letting his friends down, further reinforcing this idea of failure on Sora. However, eventually Sora would push on through and get to fight alongside his friends and beat Arendelle. The rest would then go on as normal, and then the ending portion would be slightly altered, making things more quick to the point. Vanitas would be mockingly congratulating Sora.
"Looks like you're not a total wuss after all."
These also confirm his suspicions that Ventus's heart is inside Sora. Sora, however, stands his ground, if not a bit shaken, and the rest of the cutscene would go on as normal, culminating with Yeetus Vanitas.
Close it, quick!
Man, this is just so satisfying.
Happy exterminating!
Thank you!
Starting our next interval, we get the initial scene after Monstropolis where Sora wants to go to the Realm of Darkness, but Donald and Goofy try to dissuade him due to him not being ready to do so without the power of waking. Sora expresses his frustration that he can't do anything to help, which is when Ensue calls. He relays the same information from the original scene about what he found in Ansem's research about 3 hearts inside him, as well as now the problem with Evan and the replica data missing. Sora says they'll keep an eye out for Evan, and the rest of the scene goes on as normal. We then cut to the Keyblade graveyard, where we get that scene of Saïx talking with the cloaked figure that's revealed to be Evan, now going by Vexen again. However, that's only a small fragment of what's going on in this scene now. We're really gonna beef this part up here. First off, it's just a quick reveal that it's Vexen under the coat before having his talk with Saïx about his research and all that. Then, 2 new figures enter the scene, Xigbar and Master Xehanort. I really like this scene from Remind where we actually see Xehanort and his darknesses putting their plan together, so I thought it would be nice to incorporate parts of this moment into the main narrative. Prepare to hear that a lot when I reference Remind. After some banter back and forth with Xigbar, Vexen summons his files and begins detailing how the replica process has been going so far, for those in the organization who are using them. This is used as a means of clearing up how some characters are able to return, like Vanitas for example, while also hinting at other returning characters who haven't been revealed revealed yet, and how they can come back by other means. What's important here is that Xigbar mentions that while all this is well and good, they're still screwed out of a 13th vessel due to the events that transpired in Dream Drop Distance. Vexen is perplexed himself by how to deal with this until, while scrolling through his files, he comes across something peculiar, a file he does not remember writing. The file specifically talks about one of the replicas he created that was supposed to be a substitute member for the original organization that seemed to surpass all of his prototypes, including the Riku replica from Castle Oblivion. Syax is impressed with this revelation, but wonders why this particular replica would serve as a worthy substitute. And that's when Vexen drops the bomb that this replica has a strong connection to Sora. Oh my god, 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 oh my god! I, like many of you, have not been very subtle in my disappointment when it came to Arendelle. Frozen is one of Disney's biggest 21st century IPs, and its treatment in Kingdom Hearts 3 could only be described as restrictive. Everyone and their mother at this point has seen the game theory video on how events may have transpired at Square and why Nomura and team probably weren't allowed to be as creatively free as they were with the other Disney-themed sections of the game. Hell, even Kingdom of... Jeez, still can't call it that. Which also followed the plot of its respective film to a fault, still found a way to make the world and its story feel as though Sora and company were leaving an impact. Which, in my opinion, is Arendelle's biggest problem. You can only go up and down a mountain so many times before you start asking the plot to do something actually noteworthy. So yeah, Arendelle's getting some changes. But I'm not going to stray too much from the version that we got in the original game, mostly because, much like everything else in Kingdom Hearts 3, the foundation for a solid story is there, it just needs a little bit of tweaking. Also because, dear God, this video is getting long. First things first, this world starts with a completely different opening. We will still start outside the main town area, where now, snow is just starting to fall, as we see Vexen observing the new weather. Yeah, why was the organization member who had ice powers not present in the Disney World featuring the character famous for having ice powers? Weird. I get the reason he was featured in the Caribbean, but I think he can serve a different and, in my opinion, more interesting role in this world instead. As Vexen watches the snowfall, he's greeted by the snarky remarks of Larxene. Yeah, she's still here too, doing the same mission that Marluxia was in scouting worlds for people with strong light in their hearts, but has Vexen along as a sort of initiation of sorts. We could also make a joke about whose initiation it probably is, as on one hand, Vexen's agreeableness to rejoin the organization could be seen as questionable, though on the other hand, this could be a way to mention that the organization could be wary of bringing Larxene back on board considering she and Marluxia...
Using Naminé and Sora together, you and Larxene overthrow the organization.
Yeah. It's at this moment that they notice the lake surrounding the castle town is starting to freeze over, meaning it's time to head out and investigate. Cue the world logo. Now we cut to Sora and the boys walking around, exploring this new world and immediately getting that joke about Sora being cold. Yeah, we're gonna get rid of that Heartless fight opening. I don't know, it just kind of felt like it started the story with no context. The rest, however, stays the same. The trio notice the lake turning to ice, see Elsa running, and decide to go after her. The difference here, however, is that the trio notice that following closely behind Elsa on the ice are Heartless, giving them more reason to give chase. We trek up the mountain, fight off Heartless, how the original worked. Once we reach a certain point on the mountain, we get that cutscene of Elsa walking in the snow. However, the boys don't reach her yet. Instead, she's greeted by Vexen and Larxene. The two try to make small talk with her, but even Elsa is keen to the idea that they want something from her. Something related to her powers. The two, however, play coy, with Larxene in particular hammering home that should she not control her powers, the darkness in her heart could overflow. As Elsa becomes frightened by this, Sora, Donald, and Goofy finally arrive and attempt to intervene. Sora makes that crack about new organization members provoking Larxene, but Vexen tries to keep things moving. Sora here deduces Vexen's identity and questions what he's doing with the organization, but Vexen refuses to give him a straight answer. As this is going on, Elsa is becoming increasingly scared and frustrated with what's going on, before she finally snaps, blasting ice everywhere. The boys are shocked while Larxene looks on in amusement. Elsa, frightened by the sudden use of her powers, flees once again. Sora attempts to go after her, but Vexen blocks him and tells Larxene to keep going. She leaves, and Sora tries to continue grilling Vexen on what's going on. Vexen simply replies,
"Don't worry, my dear boy. You will understand in the end."
Vexen then proceeds to trap the trio in the ice labyrinth. Further up the mountain, Elsa walks alone before Larxene appears once again. Elsa pleads with her to be left alone and that she wouldn't understand how she's feeling. But Larxene interjects that she does understand, talking about how a friend of hers went through something similar, and that the frustration and fear that Elsa is feeling toward her power is not something to be afraid of. She should embrace what her power brings, break free of her metaphorical restraints, and just let it go. Yeah, we are cutting that entire Let It Go sequence. I get it, Disney, it's your most popular song, but not a single other Kingdom Hearts world, aside from Atlantica for plot reasons, has featured any of the musical numbers from their respective films, and to do so here with not one but two songs from Frozen feels really indulgent and jarring, and takes the audience out of what's going on. So yeah, both this and Anna's Do You Want to Build a Snowman Later is being cut. But the idea of what's happening in this sequence and what it represents is still present. Elsa gets a new look, builds her castle, and remains content to stay where she is. We cut back to Sora, Donald, and Goofy in the ice labyrinth, and that sequence continues as it normally does. Once the trio reaches the end, however, they exit the portal and find that it's daytime now.
We were in there all night?
Sora is obviously frustrated, but they're quickly interrupted by some screaming. After trekking through the snow, the trio comes across Anna, Kristoff, and Sven being attacked by the Heartless on the frozen lake, with the boys stepping in to help. After the fighting subsides, the two groups become acquainted, with the trio learning that Anna is Elsa's sister and that they're trying to find her. Sora tells them what they know and decide to team up, though Kristoff mentions that they've lost Olaf. Sora tells them that they'll go look for him. Yeah, we need something to break up all the fighting, so searching for Olaf parts will have to do, in spite of how annoying it was. Look, I can't control how grating Josh Gad's Olaf voice is. Anyway, they put Olaf back together, we get that carrot gag, and another Heartless fight breaks out. Sora tells Anna to go ahead of them as they fight off the Heartless. The rest of the world goes on as it normally does in the game. Sora, Donald, and Goofy head further up the mountain, we get that scene between Anna and Elsa, and when the trio finally arrive at the castle, Marshmallow throws Anna and Kristoff out. However, during that scene, Sora notices Elsa inside, and he, Donald, and Goofy go in after her, while Marshmallow chases the others away. Sora confronts Elsa in her chamber, asking what she's doing, but Elsa just pleads for him to leave, as she doesn't want to hurt anyone anymore. Sora tries to empathize with her, but through some unfortunate mixed messaging, Elsa becomes adamant that she doesn't want their help. It's here that Sora notices that a hint of darkness resides in Elsa, and tries to calm her, but to no avail. Elsa, in one angry burst, uses her powers to blow Sora, Donald, and Goofy out of the castle, slamming the doors on their way out. Sora laments their failure, but doesn't have time to recollect themselves, as Marshmallow has come back and chases the trio away, leading to that respective boss fight. After the boss, the trio are thrown down the mountain, and after some comical complaining, Vexen appears. He basically regurgitates the same exposition Larxene gave in the original game about the duality of Elsa's powers, but more from a fascinated angle instead of trying to mock the boys. Sora is still trying to understand what Vexen is doing with the organization, but Vexen departs, telling again to Sora,
"As I told you before, Sora, you will understand in the end."
After that foreboding, the rest of the world continues as normal. The trio encounter No-Face Hans kidnapping Elsa, and decides to go after her while picking up Marshmallow as a party member along the way. After the encounter with Kristoff, the group head onto the frozen ice to save Anna, who saves Elsa from Hans and freezes in the process. Now, we're coming up on the fight with Skull, but how it's introduced is a little different. Elsa holds Anna's frozen body, and the sadness is overwhelming her. As Sora looks on, Larxene appears next to him. She needs him on about how Elsa's emotions are going to overflow and her darkness is going to envelop her soon enough, but Sora berates her, saying that Elsa is stronger than that and that her light will shine through. Larxene feigns disgust.
If that's how you really feel, then maybe we should expedite the process.
And with that, Larxene calls on the darkness inside Elsa. The shadows around her begin to flow out, and she begins to turn her attention to the cluster of darkness forming around everyone. As the darkness dies down inside a new battlefield, Skull, the embodiment of Elsa's darkness, appears, and everyone is ready for battle. When Sora remarks that they'll find a way to beat it, Elsa stands next to him. She's not running anymore, and will fight back against her fears. And so the battle begins, with both Marshmallow and Elsa as your party members for this fight. Oh, don't tell me you didn't fantasize about fighting alongside Elsa when Frozen first came out. When we have fake screenshots like these, I know you all were thinking it too. After beating Skull, he goes in for one last Big Bang attack, which pushes back our trio as well as Marshmallow. Elsa, however, continues to push forward, eventually using her ice powers to cut through the blast, and begins freezing Skull in place. Elsa struggles, but eventually a large light envelops the area, and when it dies down, we're back on the frozen lake. Everyone, though winded, is okay, as Sora looks over to see Elsa looking down at her hands, the lingering ice fading from her fingertips. She's concerned about what she's done, but Sora praises her. She saved them and beat her darkness back. She looks over to Anna, still frozen solid, and asks aloud what to do now. Sora encourages her.
If you really care about someone, you'll want to fight for them. With all your heart.
He places his hand on her shoulder and gives her one of his trademark smiles.
You got this.
Elsa, at first unsure, smiles back and approaches Anna's body, hugging it tightly. And just like in the original scene, Anna melts back to normal. Elsa's love for her sister and newfound confidence in her power save the day. The scene continues as normal with Larxene, and Vexen too, interrupting the sweet moment to comment on the light in both Anna and Elsa. Sora is fed up and angry with the organization's nonsense, to which Larxene mocks him.
My, I forgot how much of a temper you have. Sometimes I wonder if you too have a little darkness lurking inside.
Sora manages to chill out. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. And comments that they couldn't get him as one of their 13, so he won't be easily swayed. Larxene, however, mentions that they've found a suitable replacement, to which Vexen shoots her a dirty look. She wasn't supposed to say that. With the trio surprised, the two darknesses vanish, and the rest of the world ends as normal, with Elsa melting away Arendelle's eternal winter. Okay, that was a lot. I swear the last two Disney Worlds won't be that extensive in changes. Now let's move on to our next interval. We cut to the mysterious tower, and a scene similar to the one in the original game plays out with everyone playing catch up on each other's information. Sora relays that the organization is targeting more people with light in their hearts should the Guardians or the Princesses of Heart prove unreachable. News that causes alarm for everyone, as even Yen Sid finds this troubling that Xehanort would go to these lengths to ensure that the final clash takes place. It's also during this that Sora, Donald, and Goofy offhandedly mention that Maleficent and Pete are looking for a black box, but haven't given it much thought due to it being, well, Maleficent and Pete. However, the mention of a black box has the attention of Yen Sid briefly, though he doesn't speak outwardly about it any further, and diverts attention back to the task at hand. The scene continues as normal, with Riku, Mickey, and Kairi planning to go back into the Realm of Darkness to find Aqua. Sora is obviously apprehensive to this, as they just barely survived last time they were there and doesn't want his friends to get hurt. You know, reinforcing that whole theme again. However, Riku states that they are running out of time, and with the location of both Terra and Ventus still unknown, yeah, we're not going to bring up that Ventus is inside Sora until later, just to add some lingering doubt to Vanitas' claim. Aqua is their best chance at bringing all three of them back. Sora is still unsure though, and wants to help in any way he can, but Yensen interjects that until Sora finds the power of waking, him being in the Realm of Darkness wouldn't be the wisest choice. Sora then motions to Kairi, asking if she's okay with this, but she reassures him that she's ready to go back out there.
Besides, I've got 2 Keyblade Masters by my side. I'll be okay. I promise.
The two share a cute moment of understanding, though we quickly catch a glimpse of Riku turning away, a little self-doubt reflecting on his face with Kairi's comment. With their mission now set in stone, Yensid dismisses the group as they continue on their separate journeys. As they leave though, Yensid strokes his beard, pondering the mention of a black box.
What does the fairy intend to do with such a device? And what does she know of the Lost Masters?
Cut to the Keyblade Graveyard. I like this scene a lot, but we're going to rework it a tad bit to focus in on the relationship between Marluxia, Larxene, and Xemnas. I'm sure everyone has had the question of why exactly Xehanort would bring back 2 traitors to the OG organization, so we're going to focus a little more intently on that. Both Larxene and Vexen would be just arriving back and would run into Marluxia, asking about how the initiation went. Larxene complains about running into Sora, with Marluxia sharing the sentiment, though his version of the story isn't as whiny. We would get a lot of the same dialogue beats from the original scene as to why Xehanort brought them back, which is when Demyx butts in, and we get banger lines like this.
A cereal bowl would make a better vessel.
Demyx makes mention about him being benched, and then Xemnas would arrive, this time however being followed by Sayax. Demyx awkwardly dips out, knowing where this conversation is probably going and doesn't want to be around for the ugliness. Larxene initiates the conversation.
Nice to see you again, boss.
I believe we are past pleasantries. Word has spread that you two have been successful in your tasks thus far.
Is that the only word that has been spread?
Truth be told, your inclusion in our ranks I did find most curious. But I am not one to argue, as I no longer stand as your sole leader.
You've been demoted to our level. How unfortunate.
Our ranking in this new organization does not negate our importance to what we need to accomplish.
Evidently. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be following Xemnas around like a stray pup.
We all have a part to play in this narrative, as I'm sure the two of you are most aware of.
Perhaps. If that be the case, then what has your other half been doing during this time?
If you are referring to Xehanort's Heartless, he has been tying loose ends.
Xemnas projects a portal from his hand to show Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, traveling through a dark corridor with a hostage that catches Vexen's attention. Ansem the Wise.
Wait a second!
I can hear you screaming in the distance. Devin, are you trying to tell me that we're going to reveal that Ansem the Wise, who we last saw earlier in the Realm of Darkness with Aqua, got captured by the organization off-screen? Yes, that is what I'm telling you. Like I said, the initial scene of seeing Ansem the Wise get captured is being moved to later for reasons, so we need to illustrate that Ansem got captured by Ansem another way for the rest of the story structure to make sense. Ansem capturing Ansem. Okay, screw this. I'm borrowing from Frustrated Jacob and calling Xehanort's Heartless Billy Zane when the two share the same scene, because this is just... Vexen decides to take this opportunity to dip, stating that if their former master had been found, then he needs to make his final preparations with the replicas.
My former master may have some useful data laying around.
What a nerd.
Vexen has been most integral in ensuring our replicas have done their part. If Ansem the Wise has data left to give us, then our 13 Seekers of Darkness may see completion soon enough.
Oh, yeah. I kind of let slip to Sora and the others that we were ready. My bad.
Let them believe as such.
Another dark corridor opens, and from it, Master Xehanort appears.
If the Guardians of Light think that we have fulfilled our numbers, then they will panic. And panic leads to a lack of preparation. And a lack of preparation will lead to any number of factors that will ensure any path we have set as viable.
Don't you mean any path you've set, Gramps?
Come now, my electric friend. Your efforts have been nothing but essential. Hence the reason I brought you two into our ranks.
Is that the only reason? We have our desire for wanting to face Sora again, but that can't be why you brought us back. Nor is it the power of our hearts, or that we can be trusted. Why are we really here, Xehanort?
You're right. You can't be trusted. But you're wrong about the power of your hearts. Namely, the ancient Keyblade legacy within you. Lorium?
Marluxia, shocked by the utterance of his true name, is silent as Xehanort leaves. Do you guys ever wonder how Xehanort knew about Ventus before he trained him? Do you think he knew about the other Union leaders? I don't know, food for thought. Let's go be pirates!
Soon may the weatherman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tugging is done, we'll take our leave and go.
Okay, so in the Caribbean, the main story with Sora, Donald, and Goofy going through the plot of At World's End will remain virtually unchanged. Yes, Crab Spirit, Jack Sparrow included. However, there are some minor elements to this world that I wanted to tamper with. Let me set the scene. After that sequence in Davy Jones' locker with Sora learning ship combat, we cut to that scene on the organization member's boat. However, because we moved Vex in a world earlier, he won't be appearing here, so we need a different character here instead. Case in point, the first character we see on the boat is Xigbar, staring out amongst the ocean. It also looks like this shot from Birth by Sleep just to add some extra foreshadowing. After that moment of brooding, a voice catches his ear.
I didn't take you for one who fancied the ocean.
Appearing behind Xigbar from a dark corridor is Luxord.
God, that pronunciation is still terrible.
As you might have noticed by now, Luxord was actually absent from the last scene, where in the original game he was present, but I think this world could work a lot better as an introduction for him. Plus, I like that all the Disney worlds each introduce a new organization member that's actually on the roster, so might as well keep that going. Xigbar chuckles and replies,
"There's a lot of oceans out there, Luxord. Can't help but find enjoyment in at least one of them. I'm assuming you're a fan of this one in particular, considering you've been here before?"
I may have dabbled around to keep an eye on Sora, but that doesn't seem to be my task this time around. What are we doing here, Xigbar?
Right to it, I see. Looks like you'll be the man for this job after all.
What job?
Riddle me this. A black goat stashes away a letter. Then he asks a white goat to go search for it. What do you think the black goat's intentions are?
There are a number of possibilities. Perhaps he's forgotten where it's hidden, or he's playing a prank, or the letter has truly gone missing. I can think of several reasons offhand, but guessing is simply useless if you don't have the right cards.
Spoken like a true betting man. And you're not far off with your answer to boot.
So there is a point to be made then.
Xigbar chuckles with a typical
as if,
and decides to cut to the chase and detail Luxord's task to search the world for the black box. And yeah, if you haven't clued in yet, this is basically their scene from Remind. This entire scene was incredibly fascinating as we learn a little bit more about Xigbar's motivations with the black box and even gain a little insight into Luxord after all this time. So adding this scene here helps make those narrative beats for both characters much stronger, especially if we're keeping those scenes later on, but we'll get to that. We continue on with a lot of the same beats from that Remind scene playing out, with Luxord questioning why exactly Xehanort would need the black box and what exactly Xigbar is getting out of this. The discussion lingers on Luxord's question about what Xigbar's motivations are, before a third voice enters the conversation. Appearing from a dark corridor, dressed in full pirate garb, is Pete. Okay, so two things. Pete was already featured in the Pirates world in Kingdom Hearts 2, so it makes a lot of sense to bring him back here. Also with a new pirate design, the boys got some, so why not? Also, if you're going to feature a world where the organization is going to be looking for the box, why not feature some characters who have already been talking about looking for the box? Anyway, Xigbar immediately notices how silly this is all going to get and rightly dips, leaving Luxord alone and annoyed to ask what Pete is doing here. Pete aloofly explains that he overheard that they were on the hunt for the black box and decides to see what they were up to, following up on this old tidbit from before. Luxord plays coy because, well, would you give this seemingly moronic goon vital information? However, Luxord does mention that Pete could be of some use to him as the scene ends. The rest of the world continues on as it normally does, though when Sora, Donald, and Goofy make it back to the real world via the up is down scenario, they are immediately separated from the Pirates cast and meet up with Phantom Jack.
Because why on God's green earth would you put us through another Ruler of the Sky-esque boss after day?
We keep going, Luxord races the team, we drop off at Port Royal to do that whole crab hunt. Come on guys, it wasn't that bad. And then Phantom Jack disappears and the trio decide to head to Shipwreck Cove. However, just before they reach the Forsaken Isle save point, they are ambushed by Pete. It's revealed that Luxord recruited Pete to keep the boys out of the way while he found a way to steal the box. Sora informs him that he's an idiot and that the organization is just going to take the box for themselves, but Pete isn't going to let them make a fool out of him and arms his ship for a fight. We get some ship combat before boarding Pete's vessel, and we get a boss fight directly with him. Come on guys, we had a bunch with him in Kingdom Hearts 2. We can have at least one boss fight with Pete in this game, right? Anyway, the boys beat him, Pete makes a hasty exit.
I ain't going down with this ship!
And the boys get back on their boat and head for the final boss. And the rest of the Caribbean goes on as normal. We get the Kraken fight, Jack defeats Luxord with the power of gingivitis. We fight against Davy Jones and end off on our sweet CG cutscene. Although in said cutscene, when Jack threatens Davy Jones with the heart inside the box, we cut to Luxord, who stares on with a sigh as he shakes his arms dry from being wet.
Disappointing.
He then summons a dark corridor and leaves. After that, they kill Davy Jones, wipe out the British, and that's the end of the world. Our last interval starts at Twilight Town, with Ansem the Wise being dragged to the old mansion by Billy Zane. The scene is basically the same as what we got in the original game, except the dialogue between the two is a tad bit different. We don't really know anything about this mystery girl that Billy Zane keeps bringing up, who is referred to as Subject X in the game's secret reports, and honestly, I think that's the only place this character should be mentioned until we know anything else about them later on. It just adds unnecessary exposition to a story that really doesn't need it. Instead, this scene between the two is focused more on the pain and mistakes that Ansem the Wise caused throughout his research into the heart, which is ultimately what Billy Zane is after, to help Xehanort's plan along for the replicas and ensuring the 13 Seekers of Darkness are raring to go. Also, I just love the setup for this scene because Ansem is being told all of these failures in his life from a character who shares the same name as him, which is just excellente. Anyway, the scene continues on with Hayner, Pence, and Olette getting in the way, escaping with Ansem to the tunnels, and meeting up with Vexen, who reveals himself as a double agent to the organization, he too wanting to atone for his past mistakes. Cut to the Realm of Darkness. Riku, Mickey, and Kairi are all on guard as they search for Aqua, finding themselves back at the Dark Margin. They look around and notice it to be once again completely empty, leaving the trio without a lot of confidence.
You sure Aqua couldn't find a way out? I mean, we're able to go back and forth between realms. How do we know Aqua didn't learn to do the same?
Well, it's not that simple for her. Besides, after what happened, I don't know if Aqua still has access to her Keyblade down here.
Riku, shocked, asks how that could be possible, but is interrupted as Kairi sees something closer to the shore. Everyone looks, and sure enough, standing along the shoreline is Aqua. Mickey excitedly runs off to greet his old friend.
Aqua! It's us! We've come to save you!
Aqua, however, is still staring out to the sea and just simply whispers,
Mickey, save me.
And before the Mouse King and his friends can even approach her, a wave of darkness sprouts out from the ground, blasting the trio back. Mickey summons his Keyblade to cut through the darkness, but it pushes him back toward Riku and Kairi, with him dropping the Kingdom Key S in the process. The king collects himself next to his two companions as he looks out to see Aqua just still staring out at the sea.
You can't save me, Mickey. You're too late.
Okay, yeah. Alright, listen, to address that, we're moving the anti-Aqua reveal earlier. By doing this, we're adding some lingering mystery as to what exactly happened to Aqua because, as previously mentioned, Ansem the Wise was kidnapped off screen, and because Aqua was last seen with him, this scenario has now left our audience with the question of what happened. We're finally getting to thicker plot points. But we do have one more Disney World, so hang tight. Like with the Caribbean, San Fransokyo is completely unchanged in its main story. Sora's interactions and influence on the Big Hero 6 team are near perfect, and I don't really see any major alteration that's needed. That is, with the exception of Dark Riku. This character really confused me when he showed up because nobody would give a straight answer as to who this version of Riku is supposed to be. Obviously, Dark Riku is supposed to be a new version of Riku Replica from Chain of Memories, but they undercut it so much with the whole fake out of, this is Riku from Kingdom Hearts 1 when he was evil brought to the present. It's really lame and undersells what could be a really cool moment for the events of Chain of Memories to be brought back into Sora's mind, especially considering things that are going to happen later, but per usual, that'll be something I'll get to later. For now, I should probably bring attention to the fact that Riku Replica hasn't been mentioned at all, despite him being prominent in the original version of Kingdom Hearts 3. To me, the character's conclusion in Chain of Memories always felt conclusive, literally calling himself a faithful replica to the very end. So there was no way this version of the character, I thought anyway, was going to come back unless it served a legitimate narrative purpose. And when he appeared briefly in Dream Drop Distance, I was very interested where they would take this, but when it paid off in Kingdom Hearts 3, it kind of felt half-baked. In KH3, the OG Riku replica just feels like a get-out-of-jail-free card anytime Riku was in danger, and also something about his affection and devotion for Naminé, but we'll address that later. And Dark Riku being a reflection of how far Riku has come since Kingdom Hearts 1 feels hollow. So, long story short, Dark Riku is being treated differently to accommodate the lack of OG Riku replica in this version. For example, after the first fight with the Dark Cubes, God, what a lame name, just call them bug blocks, guys, that's what they are. Dark Riku doesn't immediately reveal himself to the group, instead silently taking the evil Baymax chip and dipping. The next day, right before the Dark Baymax fight, is when we get his big hood off reveal. Sora is definitely shocked by this reveal, asking how Riku could be here, though Donald and Goofy note that this Riku is much younger than the one that they know.
Oh yeah. They told me you wouldn't remember anything from the castle.
Sora is confused as this is the third time in a row someone has mentioned him forgetting a person that knows him well. Dark Riku then continues to monologue about the power of hearts and how the creation of a being such as Baymax will give him the data needed to complete his mission. Basically, his job in this world is to help gather the data to help perfect Xehanort's replicas, which can harken back to KH1 when Riku tried to kidnap Pinocchio, but I digress. A lot of the same dialogue beats from this scene are kept, which leads into the reveal and subsequent boss fight against Dark Baymax. After the fight, when Baymax lands, Sora looks off to the distance to see Dark Riku watching from afar. He gives an evil grin, waves to Sora, then disappears. Sora turns away, angry.
They can't keep getting away with this.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Donald and Goofy come to his side though, reassuring him that as long as they work together, like Hero and the team, they can beat them. The rest of the scene continues as normal, with Hero eulogizing the original Baymax and destroying the bad chip. Eventually, he rebuilds Baymax, and this world's story concludes. Also, in addition to getting the Nanogear Keyblade, we get a Heartbinder for Baymax. Come on, this world was perfectly set up for Baymax to be a summon. Come on, Nomura, why not follow through with it? Oh yeah, I also forgot, we do get one more scene before this world ends. In daytime San Fransokyo, high up on one of the skyscrapers, Maleficent is looking over the skyline. Behind her, Dark Riku appears. She looks at him quizzically, but then smiles.
Fascinating. A replica of a bygone time. He must really be desperate.
I didn't take you for the nostalgic type.
But of course, one must have an interest with the past if they wish to have a future to look forward to.
Is that why we keep finding you snooping around?
I haven't the faintest idea of what you're talking about.
Okay, go ahead and play dumb. Just don't overstep, unless you want darkness to overtake you again.
I've learned my lesson since then. I just hope you remember the same.
I don't fear the darkness. Besides, I won't have a need to, with what Xehanort is planning.
What is Xehanort planning?
Dark Riku doesn't respond. He just snickers at her and departs. Maleficent's usual sneer then fades to a look of concern and contemplation. before turning her attention back to the skyline. Whatever Xehanort does have planned, it worries her. Whew! And with that, we have finished all of the Disney worlds. That was a lot, but hopefully it has laid enough of a foundation for where the rest of the story takes us. Speaking of which, what does happen next? Oh. Right.
Hey guys, what is going on? Devin here. Hope you guys are having a good day so far. Thank you so much for checking out today's video. This was, per usual, a lot of hard work to put together, but I'm really happy with how this one turned out. Of course, a huge thank you to my voice cast for helping out with this video. You guys are awesome and extremely talented. All of their social media links are in the description below. Please go check them out and support them, and I'm really looking forward to having you guys hear more of them in the next video. Seriously, I'm editing part 3 right now, and it's just real good stuff. But until that video comes around, if you liked this video, then hit the like button, comment below what you thought about it, as well as share it around with all of your friends. And of course, subscribe to the channel as well as ring the bell for notifications, because YouTube has no idea what it's doing anymore. Be sure to follow Shadow Shoveler Productions on both Twitter and Instagram for more on yours truly. And until next time, I'd say that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Deep O's out.